This is East Carolina Offensive Coordinator Donnie Kirkpatrick. We are talking one of my favorite things, Pirate football, on the Sports Objective.
Yeah. My heart is purple and gold. I'm a pirate down to my soul, and I don't back down, not at all. Find out when the cannons explode. From the sidelines down to the post. Put it down like not even close. All out to the last whistle blow. From the flag with the soul and crossbones. Everybody stand up, get your hands up. Let a team know that we got they back. This is our house, this is our town, our time. Every 1-9 copy.
How about those friggin' Pirates?
Welcome into the Sports Objective as we have another great show lined up for you. And the summer has been going by fast, and certainly we love to talk about college football. And Bubba Rosenbaum, how are you, man?
Doing well, Dave. Hope you are.
No doubt. In fact, we love when we talk college football to have great guests. Bubba, another one of our favorites, back on with us.
Yeah, this guy was just at Media Days for the SEC in Nashville. Very excited to welcome Chris Doering back from the SEC Network. And Chris, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, guys. Good to be back with you. Sorry I'm doing this from my car, but got hit with a little rainstorm in the Jeep and had to pull over and navigate that whole deal. So nonetheless, good to be with y'all.
No doubt. We got Kyle with us now, Kyle from LaGrange Barber also. He's coming on with us. But one thing that I heard, I just literally, it's funny when you do a live show, Chris, you have like things in mind you're going to talk about. And then I saw there was a report from Brett McMurphy that Colorado is going to be moving to the Big 12. So I wanted to get, before we even get diving into what I had planned, I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was crazy that they left to begin with. I think
Right.
It's always been a good fit there in that conference, and glad to see them going back. Obviously, further proof that the Pac-12 is on life support. But I've heard jokes from around the SEC wanting to know if they'll take Missouri back too. That's not me. That's some other people saying, but certainly some weird fits in college football these days with UCLA and USC heading to the Big Ten, and just interesting movements this time of year.
Chris, with Colorado's move to the this is Kyle, by the way, with Colorado's move to the from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, do you agree with me? I think it's pretty much imminent that Washington and Oregon will be heading to the Big 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's scrambling for life rafts right now. So I think that probably makes a lot of sense. I'm interested to see what these numbers growing in other conferences does to further expand. I mean, I think we've been talking about forever having four power 4 conferences that have mega conferences that have 20 or more teams in them. So interested to see how the dominoes continue to fall as the movement takes place.
What about the Four Corners schools? Do you think they'll also go to the Big 12?
I really have no idea what these folks are going to do. It's interesting to think about all the back channeling and communication that's going on, and where people find the best opportunity to keep the revenue up as much as possible.
Dave, I think it's pretty. I think with Colorado making that decision today with the Pac-12, basically their new media deal's done, and it's similar money to what the ACC has. So I think with Colorado making that decision, I think that pretty much indicates that Oregon and Washington are headed to the Big Ten eventually. And when that happens, those other 3-4 corner schools, Arizona State, Utah, are going to get to the Big 12 too. It'll be interesting to see, and then we'll dive into the SEC, but it'll be interesting to see the Pac-12 if they're left with Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, Cal. Can they survive? I don't know at what point. How many teams have to leave to vote to dissolve the league?
It's down to 4, I thought. When it gets down to 4, I thought they have to.
I don't know. It depends on the conference bylaws. The Big East, they survived with 3 schools and then added and became the American. So I don't know what their bylaws are, but if the Pac-12 survives, the Mountain West will be ripped apart. And just for our listeners, if the Pac-12, if all this plays out the way it looks like it's going to play out, SMU is, a lot of people are talking about them going to the Pac-12. If the Pac-12 decides not to come that far east, it could be interesting for the American after the Mountain West is raided by the Pac-12. If they survive, some of those remaining Mountain West schools, the American could be in the position to take from the Mountain West after the Pac-12 does. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Shifting to the SEC, obviously that's where you focus, Chris. Over the last couple years, or few years, it's been Georgia, Alabama. Last year you had Tennessee that really had a nice season. And then obviously LSU. LSU got better as the season went on, even though they kind of stumped their toe there late against Texas A&M, still made the championship game. So what's your take on some of those front runners?
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia's obviously head and shoulders above everybody else in the conference, and that includes Alabama. I think they're the best program in the nation. I expect them to go 12-0 again this year. I expect them to win the SEC championship, and I expect them to win a third straight national title. First program to do that since the 30s when Minnesota did it. So I think the interesting storylines for me are who wins the West. I believe in LSU. I believe in that improvement you talked about, that Brian Kelly transformed them from the team that played FSU to the team that was able to make it to the SEC championship game. I called the Citrus Bowl and was on the sideline for that. I saw a team that is really well connected with great chemistry, a mix of youth and experience, and a lot of talent. So I think they take a step forward. And I honestly believe Alabama takes a step back.
Wow.
Two new coordinators. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. To me, maybe the biggest, most frustrating thing is the lack of real development of the offensive line the last couple of years, the lack of development of the wide receivers. Obviously, they recruit the best of the best, but those two units have been largely disappointing and under what the expectation level is typically for Alabama's programs at those two positions. So I think that's kind of how I see it shaking out. Another rematch in the SEC championship game between Georgia and LSU, and Georgia ultimately winning.
Continuing with the West, you mentioned Alabama, Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher. With all the money they're paying him this year, I think it's kind of put up or shut up time. Interesting dynamic with his new offensive coordinator. How do you think that's going to play out? Two very big personalities there.
Yeah, it was interesting at media days how hesitant Jimbo Fisher was to admit that he was passing play calling duties over to Bobby Petrino. Reluctantly, finally did, I believe, on Feinbaum. But I can understand his resistance. But I mean, that's what you brought Bobby Petrino in, and you need an infusion of some new ideas and some better development of the quarterback. Hunter Wegman, I think, will probably win that job, but he's got to get better from where he was last year at the end of the season. I think his experience in the second half of the year certainly will help him. But I like Texas A&M's position this year. I like them being under the radar. They were way overhyped the last 2 years. Nobody's really talking about them right now. There's a lot of youth that returns. They got some experience last year. The defensive line the front seven had to struggle through playing 17 and 18-year-old kids there. That's not an ideal situation for the SEC, but those guys will be better. And I honestly believe that that Texas A&M could be a dark horse kind of team in the West this season.
Do you think Jimbo and Petrino can coexist? That's kind of my concern. I could see them about 3 games in, ready to strangle each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're grown men, though. I think they understand the dynamics. If they're going to both survive, they're going to need to do it together. And I really like the tone of the guys I talked to. Anaya Smith, one of my favorite players in the SEC. Returns from that injury that kept him out for most of the year last year. He seems very focused. There's a sense of urgency about the team in general. And like I said, I like them being a little under the radar this year as compared to where they've been the last 2.
Chris, what about as far as the Eastern division? Do you think somebody like a Kentucky could surprise folks? I mean, Coach Stoops is doing a great job. I'm not saying like we don't know that the program is great, but what about like Kentucky, or what is your surprise team this year?
I actually have Kentucky finishing second in the SEC East. Now, those of you that know me know that I've been a fan of this program and of Coach Stoops for a long time. I went out on a limb and predicted them to go 11-1 last year and beat Georgia and go to the SEC championship game. Obviously, they did not do that. Fell well short of that. But I think 2 of the biggest moves of the offseason in the SEC included getting Devin Leary over from NC State and also bringing Liam Cohen back. I think Liam Cohen is one of the most underrated coordinators in the country. I thought he was destined to be an NFL guy. After 1 year, he returned to Lexington, and that speaks a lot about what he believes in what's possible there. and what Coach Stoops does to give him some autonomy in running that offense. So if the offensive line can be anywhere better than what they were last year, they've got a really good group of wide receivers, the best group that they've had probably in the history of the program. The running back from Vanderbilt, Ray Davis, comes over and gives you a 1,000-yard back, a proven guy in this conference. And so I really think it all comes down to the offensive line doing much better than what they did last year and allowing all those offensive skill position players to do their jobs.
Looking at the East, Shane Beamer in year 3 at South Carolina, one of my favorite guys in college football. Such a nice dude. They really took a big step forward last year. The second half of the season did South Carolina. Big week 1 game in Charlotte with the Tar Heels. What do you think of the Gamecocks for 2023?
Yeah, they're one of the most difficult teams, I think, to kind of figure out. They got hot at the end of the year. We remember the way Spencer Rattler was carving up Tennessee and Clemson's secondary. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions. You lose some really good players, particularly at the tight end position with Austin Stogner going back to Oklahoma and Jaheim Bell going to Florida State. You lose Marshawn Lloyd at the running back spot too. So I'm a big fan of Juice Wells. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the conference. But I'm interested to see how Dow Loggins, the new offensive coordinator, can put his fingerprint on the offense and expand on kind of what they were able to do at the end of the year. I have questions about the running back position, and I have questions about the offensive line. I mean, it's funny because they've been able to build some pretty good defensive lines over the last couple seasons, but the consistency on the offensive line has been kind of elusive. So it's a big, for me, that's one of the biggest range from ceiling to floor. I could see them, maybe winning 8-9 games, and I could see them also winning 5 games. So a lot depends on Spencer Rattler being able to continue what he did at the end of the year last year.
Talking about quarterback play, sticking with the East, you had a tremendous season last year for Hendon Hooker. Unfortunately, he got hurt. Joe Milton stepped in, performed pretty well. But how do you see the Vols doing this year under Josh Heupel and staff?
Yeah, I was surprised to see the statistic that our sports and information group gave us before the media days is Tennessee hasn't won back-to-back, haven't won 11 games in back-to-back seasons since 97 and 98. We know what they did in 98 with T. Martin winning the national title. It's difficult to win that many games. I don't think there's a lot of room to go up, honestly. I do believe in Joe Milton. But I think there's a lot of teams this offseason that have spent time studying that Tennessee offense, how they can try to defend, what their deep choice routes are, that little 2-man combination they run. So I think you're going to see a lot of creativity. I think you'll see a lot of people trying to replicate what Georgia did last year. That game plan was to be physical with Tennessee, physical with the receivers on the outside, physical in the way that you bring the rush up the middle. That the drop of the quarterback is very shallow to make sure they can compensate for being ready to throw the ball quickly on some of the options in that choice route. So I think you'll see a lot of people trying to do the same thing as what Georgia did. The question is, do they have the personnel to be able to accomplish that?
No doubt. And before we let you go, we've got a question from one of our viewers, Shell Powell from Charlotte, home of the first ESPN. I know the game day is going to be there, North Carolina, South Carolina. He says, "Hey, Chris, my dad is a UGA grad. And with that said, I always love watching you play, even though you're a Gator." He said, "What is your thoughts on the UGA quarterback battle?"
Yeah, I mean, I take Aaron Murray is a good friend of ours and obviously close to that program. I take a lot of what he says to heart, and he's been very high on Carson Beck. It's interesting because as I look at Alabama, I dock them for having a new offensive coordinator. I dock them for not knowing who their quarterback's going to be. And quite frankly, the same is true at Georgia. New offensive coordinator taking over there, and Mike Bobo. I expect them to do a lot of the same things that Todd Monken did last year. And a new quarterback with some uncertainty on who exactly it's going to be. The difference in those two programs, though, is the talent surrounding the quarterback. On that offense, they got the best offensive line in the conference and probably one of the best in the country. They got a really talented group of pass catchers. Now, in the years past, we've been talking about tight ends, but this wide receiver, I think this might be one of the best wide receiver cores in the conference. When you look at Ladd McConkey coming back, you look at the fact that they added Dominic Lovett over from Missouri. Ra Thomas reportedly has some work to do after arriving from Starkville. Arian Smith, though, they got some really good players that I think Georgia hasn't had access to. So the supporting cast, to me, minimizes the questions that I have as the quarterback situation gets some clarity, and having a new coordinator in there. I expect the Dogs not to miss much of a beat this season.
So they're going to win it all, a three-peat, like you said. So that beat my last question I had for you when you told us earlier on. Chris, how can people get up with you? And I know they can watch you on the SEC Network. We enjoy your work.
Yeah, thank you very much. We get shows starting next week, actually. I'll be on the SEC Network on August 2nd, August 3rd. Every day I do morning radio with Peter Burns and Alyssa Lang, alternating as my co-host. So that's Sirius XM channel 374, the SEC channel. And then on Twitter at Chris Doering and Instagram at cdoring28. All
right. I know the busy time for you coming up. Appreciate your work and appreciate you coming on. Thanks for being on with us again.
Yeah, thanks for your flexibility and having me, man. Take care.
Sure thing.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. All right, Chris Doering there from the SEC guys. And Kyle, Bubba, what are your thoughts about, since we're talking SEC, we'll talk some more SEC, something we don't do a lot on the show, but to give credit where credit's due, usually are the top conference yet again. What are your thoughts, guys?
Georgia's going to be – go ahead, Bubba.
Sticking with that Eastern Division in the SEC East, we were discussing this briefly before we went live, talking about Mizzou. Eli Drinkwitz, former App State head coach and NC State offensive coordinator, entering year 4. He has gone 5-5 and then 6-7 in each of the last 2 years. So really needing a winning season there. That goes without saying. Last year, they had Georgia on the ropes there in Columbia, unable to close that one out, obviously. And then they really let a game that I watched the last few possessions of, and then overtime, they let a game slip at Auburn. But I'm very interested to see what the Tigers do this year. And then also, on the West side, you have a first-year head coach in Zach Arnett, 36 years old, taking over for the late Mike Leach, going toward a new offensive philosophy. So interested to see how that works out in Starkville. And then one of the premier coaching hires of the all season, Hugh Freeze, back in the SEC after doing an excellent job at Liberty.
You talk about the Mississippi State hire, promote their defense coordinator. They're changing their offense philosophy. Mike ran his air raid style offense, incorporated a bit more run in Mississippi State. I think they're going to struggle this year. It's going to be a late season upset, but go look at Mississippi State's schedule and look who they play in November. And I'm calling for an upset. I'll give you a hint. It's an old East Carolina rival.
Southern Miss.
You got it. They're playing them in November, and I like the Eagles to pull that upset.
So like Arnie, that's an old Arnie Spanier upset special, bro.
Yeah, that's what I'm calling it now. The Golden Eagles upset the Bulldogs in November.
Well, and I take that game as in Starkville, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I figured it would be, but yeah, guys, for me, Bubba, when you said Hugh Freeze, really excited about him coming to Auburn because he's a guy that could beat. He's definitely a guy that could beat Nick Saban. The question is, can he beat Kirby Smart? Is the question now. And we'll see about that. But that was one of the things I was going to bring up tonight was Hugh Freeze. So I'm glad you talked about that. And what do you guys think about Billy Napier at Florida? That was another one I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, didn't have an opportunity, ran out of time to discuss some of these things with Chris. Certainly try to have him back on during the season, perhaps. But obviously, Chris was a standout wide receiver for Steve Spurrier's Gators. Played with Danny Warfel. And catching passes from the Heisman Trophy winner back there in the mid 90s. But yeah, the Gators last year, 6-7. From everything you hear, they're recruiting very well. With Billy Napier and staff, you hear he's so thorough, tutored under Dabo, and then also Nick Saban did what he did at Louisiana with the Raging Cajuns. So I think it's just a matter of time before he gets it done. Chris, I know he thinks their schedule even by SEC standards, is very challenging. So he would not be surprised if the improvement is not reflected in the win total. I know Shane Matthews, who I listen to on a regular basis, the former standout quarterback and SEC Player of the Year there in the early '90s, that Shane thinks that they're going to win at least 8. And he's right there in Gainesville. He's their color analyst on their radio network and follows the program very closely. So I put a lot of stock in what he says. I tend to agree that I think they'll be probably 7 or 8 wins.
We'll know what Florida is pretty early. They play the first Thursday night of the year, week 1. They play Utah.
Yep.
It's a marquee matchup for
Yep.
Thursday. I believe that's August 31st is the date. So that'll be a fun one to watch. The Utes and the Gators. It ought to be a very physical football game.
That should be great.
Out there in Salt Lake City after knocking them off Thriller last year in Gainesville, and last year you certainly saw glimpses with Florida. Anthony Richardson, not necessarily, even though he's a high draft pick, still it was very early on in his Gator career, and some inconsistencies there at the quarterback position, and they have Graham Mertz coming down from Wisconsin, very highly touted coming out of high school. Did some nice things with the Badgers, but I know there are some doubters there, and obviously that's a big question mark how that will play out. How will Mertz fare in the orange and blue? But I think Graham Mertz will turn out to be probably maybe not necessarily a better NFL quarterback. We shall see. And I say a better NFL quarterback, that type of NFL stock going into the draft. But I think that he will be more consistent with some of the pieces that he has around him in the offense of Billy Napier.
And no question about it. And what about, I want to get both of your opinion on, what about Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss? Do you think, they can keep him, but also does he stay there? But also, what kind of year do you think he'll have?
Yeah, does he stay there? How much do they want him? I think he might have reached his peak at Ole Miss. It looked like when he first got the job, he was going to take that program to the next level, and they've kind of plateaued.
Right.
So I think Kiffin's going to do what Lane Kiffin does, and Ole Miss is going to do what Ole Miss does. I think they'll be about a 7-8 win football team.
Yeah, I certainly think they'll be pretty good offensively. Just a matter of how well they can stop people to do more than what they've done, and that really, I don't know, just this is something that Shane Matthews, I'll give him credit for this, and it's something, the more he said it, I was like, well, that is true, that even though he's had success there in Oxford, they really haven't beaten anybody that they probably shouldn't have beaten. And they had that near miss without Alabama, where Alabama came to Oxford and they lost right at the end of that game, but they really haven't won a game that they shouldn't have won, so to speak. So will be interesting to see. And before we move on from Ole Miss and the SIP, what an appearance Lane Kiffin had there at the media days. I'm sure you guys saw the picture on social media. A lot of comments being made and jokes flowing about Lane Kiffin and that hair and the appearance of being, kind of like the hungover frat appearance.
Yeah, did not see the picture, so he looked a bit disheveled at a media days.
Yes, I'll see if I can access that and put it on the screen for our viewers right quick.
Okay.
I didn't see I'm in the same boat with Kyle. I've heard a lot of audio, but I didn't see what, the video of the coaches. I was listening to it on the radio. So he got a pass from me, at least for the time being, until I see that picture. Kyle, what are your thoughts overall? You like Georgia again? Who you going with as far as
honestly,
winning?
I've done a lot of research on the SEC. It's kind of hard to go against Georgia, though. The return of Mike Bobo does not excite me.
Right.
I'll say that. Where did Home Slice go?
Monken.
Yeah, where did Todd Monken go?
Bubba
will be back in a minute. He's looking for a picture right now.
Yeah.
He'll tell us. But Bobo's, hey, it's been a while since he's been an OC. in the SEC, I don't know. They may take a step back because of that. Todd Monken's an elite offensive mind.
He's the offensive coordinator for the Ravens.
Yeah, he's an elite offensive mind, so that's a big loss. I don't know. I'll go with Georgia in the East, but I don't think it's going to be as dominant as Chris thinks because of the loss of Todd Monken. And in the West, I like Chris LSU. LSU got better as the season went on. Brian Kelly's an excellent football coach. I like LSU in the West. Alabama will be there, but I like LSU, so I'm gonna go Georgia, LSU, and then after that, who knows? I'm not going to put Kentucky second in the East, so I understand why he did once he pointed some things out. I think probably I'll go Tennessee for second in the East, Alabama second in the West.
Yeah, let's hope that Tennessee, as far as their fans, that they will be able to have another great year. But they dodged a bullet, guys, with any kind of postseason ban like we thought was coming, but because of the mess with Jeremy Pruitt. So everybody in Knoxville, they breathed a sigh of relief, and they don't have to worry about that. But I'm a huge fan of Stoops at Kentucky. I sell them way too high, but I like Kentucky, and maybe Tennessee has another great year. That would be fantastic for those fans. I don't think it's going to happen 2 years in a row. Maybe that's just me. I could be wrong.
His offense is. Go ahead.
Something of interest about Kentucky that I don't believe we've mentioned yet, unless you guys mentioned it while I stepped away for a moment. But Devin Leary moving over from NC State, taking over for the departed Will Levis.
Yeah, Chris talked about that.
Yeah, so Devin Leary moving over from NC State, and so very interested to see how that turns out. But going back to the disheveled Lane Kiffin picture from Media Days, there you go.
He has, you know what that looks like? It looks like a.
And I apologize for our viewers that's what as you can tell, when I downloaded that picture, that caption was not appearing when I downloaded it. So there you go.
What's your mom's name? For our listeners, is the caption. To me, it looks like he just came back from vacation from the beach. To me,
it looks like he has a spray on tan, guys. A spray.
Yeah, I wasn't talking. Yeah, I was referencing the hair more, not the tan.
There you go. Well, I can't talk about hair, so I have a face for radio, and I don't have the hair. So anyway, it's going to be great, guys, to see how that plays out every conference. By the way, I want to remind everybody listening tonight, don't forget our special college football preview Saturday, August 5th, and that's going to be at Porky's Backyard Barbecue. Thank you to our sponsor, Porky's, they invited us. We were going to do the show, everybody be at home, but Porky's, Mark Holliday and Miss Joyce, they said, do it here with us. And I said, okay. So we're going to be doing it from 10 until noon, Porky's Backyard Barbecue. And they do a lot of great catering. If you're interested in catering, give them a call in advance and let them know. 252-661-0337. And they're located at 805 East Boulevard in Williamston. The Saturday breakfast buffet, Kyle, you've got to come and hang out with me. It's awesome. It is awesome. And you'll love anything at Porky's, period, whenever you come. I hope you and Jessica will come and hang out with me, but it's a lot of fun. Your dad eats there a lot, like me. So I see your dad. I see your dad more than I see you.
Well, my dad lives in Williamston.
I know he does, but
I live an hour and 15 minutes from Williamston.
Right.
We'll try to be there on the 5th. If not, we'll certainly be there digitally, via the podcast. But we'll try to be there in person. There's about a 50-50 shot. Hard to believe that's next Saturday.
It's coming up quick, dude. I know. It really is. I want to make sure everybody knew that.
Yeah. And now, if we can, I don't know if y'all want to talk about the SEC anymore. I've about had all the SEC talk I can handle.
Very quickly. B-Pays says that Lane Kiffin looks like he's going to happy hour at the Hilton after a long day.
Yeah, definitely not a media day. It's more like a happy hour. You're right about that, Pays. Spot on as usual. What about, again, the breaking news, if you're just joining us, Colorado to the Big 12, a really big story, and not what we were prepared to. That's the way this time of year works. We had a whole game plan of what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about the Pirates also, but Guys, Kyle, you've been, I know that you are big like me and Bubba when it comes to college realignment, and I want to get your thoughts.
I think it's a good indicator that Michigan and Washington are going to the Big Ten.
Oregon, you mean?
That's in Michigan.
You're
Jesus,
you're
they're
high on
already in
Michigan.
the Big Ten. I had it on my mind that I want to talk about Harbaugh being suspended.
Okay, we can
But
talk about that too.
Oregon and Washington headed to the Big Ten. I think it's imminent. I think that's probably a lot to do with Colorado's decision. It'll be interesting to see how soon that happens. It'll
Right.
also be interesting to see how soon the other four corner schools make that decision. The Pac-12, from everything I've heard, their new media deal with multiple streaming and linear um, sources, however you want to say that, is all set to be announced any day now. So I don't know if losing teams is going to throw a monkey wrench into that. Who knows? How many teams will the Pac-12 eventually lose? If they're left with 4 or 5 teams, will the conference survive? I don't know what their bylaws are. If they survive, are they going to raid the Mountain West? There's some rumors that SMU is on their radar. I think things are going to probably get pretty crazy. I can guarantee you this: Colorado is not going to be the only team leaving the Pac-12.
Correct. And the fact is that I think, guys, I could be crazy, but I put in our chat, watch for Pac-12 teams to the American.
I don't think that'll happen. I think the Pac-12 will survive in some sort, just like the Big East did. But I do think what could end up happening, if the Pac-12 does survive in some way, shape, or form, and doesn't decide to go this far east and take SMU, and the American doesn't lose anybody, and the Mountain West gets disavowed by the Pac-12, meaning they take like 6 schools from the Mountain West, I think then the American would be sitting pretty to poach who's left in the Mountain West that we would want. So this could end up good for the American. It could end up bad. It depends. Is SMU on their radar? The Pac-12.
Tulane.
Is Tulane on? I've heard the Tulane thing. I haven't heard a lot of people discuss that.
SMU a lot.
SMU has came up numerous times. If the Pac-12 does survive, I think the Pac-12 survives, but I wouldn't be surprised unless their bylaws.
It says, well, I know what it says. It says that if it gets down to 4 teams, they have to dissolve the league.
Okay, well, then it's possible that the league could be dissolved, and then nobody would have to pay an exit fee, because it is possible that Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, Washington State would be the only 4 left.
Right.
What the Pac-12 needs to do immediately to try to keep that from happening, because if everybody doesn't leave at once, then you can get members in now,
right?
And that would keep that from happening. So what they need to do immediately is invite San Diego State, Boise State. Go ahead and invite in
Fresno
3 or 4
State.
from the Mountain West. Yes, immediately, so the league can survive. If they don't do that, if the Pac-12 doesn't move in a hurry, they're living. Then what you said could happen. You could end up with some Pac-12 schools either in the American or Mountain West. But I'm guessing they're going to move fast and invite in a team or 2.
Would you guys take some from some from Pac-12 and some from Mountain West, so you kind of have a conference, if you will, like what we would typically know of a conference in the West Coast, and then what we talked about, like a merger where you have some teams from the Mountain West, some teams from Pac-12, and what we have with American?
If they vote to dissolve, if the league gets dissolved, if that were to happen, if they're left with 4 schools, which I don't see that happening, because I think they'll go ahead and invite in a couple now. But if they do get left with 4 schools, then anything could happen. You could see those 4 schools join the Mountain West. You could see those 4 schools forming a new league with Mountain West schools. You could see a hybrid of some schools from the Mountain West, the American, and the Pac-12. You can see all kinds of things happening. But I think what will most likely happen is the Pac-12 will move now, go ahead and invite in some schools. So when they do lose some more schools to the Big 12 and Big 10, they'll have more than 4 members and be able to survive as a league.
Maybe like 8 teams, instead of like the Pac-12 or the Pac-8, like it used to be.
I think they'll eventually go back to 12. They'll eventually just totally raid the Mountain West. But I think for now, you go ahead and invite San Diego State, Boise State, UNLV, Fresno State, maybe those 4, and that gets you you'll have 8 members if everybody that you think leaves.
Hey, I've got a question for you, Kyle. If you're right now, I know they came back in 2013 that time, but if you're Mike Oresco and you he loves markets, would you go after UNLV and like San Diego State, Boise
Well,
State?
it depends on what the Pac-12 does. What I would do if I was Mike Oresco right now is call every school in the Mountain West and say, hey, look, the Pac-12 is going to come calling. Not all of you are going to get in. We'll be in touch, because I really believe, like I said, unless we end up losing multiple teams to this thing, I really believe we're going to have a chance to pick what's left of the Mountain West after the Pac-12 kind of takes it apart. Because I do think the Pac-12 is going to end up surviving.
They may be, and we have Peanut Butter Hero that says Stanford and Cal are going to the Big Ten to be independent. What do you think about that? Because I've heard
so Stanford and Cal doesn't get into the Big Ten, he thinks they'll go independent. No, it won't happen, and I'll tell you why it won't happen.
With the playoff, right?
Correct. If you're one of the 6 highest rated conference champions, you get into the playoff. So that's why I think Stanford and Cal probably wouldn't go independent. Although I know Stanford does love their Olympic sports.
They got a lot of them.
I don't know, where the best home for those would be. But no, I don't think that'll happen. I really don't think they'll go independent because of the playoff format, with having the 6 highest rated conference champions getting in and starting in 24. I think that's eventually going to force Notre Dame into a conference, to be honest.
Yes, it is. And that'll be interesting to see if they go Big Ten, ACC, what they do. But the rumor I heard a couple months ago, I haven't heard any more. And I told you guys, Stanford and Cal joining Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC in the Big Ten.
If that happens, then
that's 6 schools.
Then if that happens in the fourth corner and the other 3 four-corner schools go to the Big 12, then the Pac-12 is done. Oregon State, Washington State, who's left, and then it's just a question of whether they go to the Mountain West or the American.
And how about that? P-Pay says Arizona, Utah are next. UConn on our side, that will kill the Pac-12 in my opinion. And UConn is you're right, Pays. In the last few weeks, I told Semenza, he's not a UConn fan, but obviously he's from that area, and he couldn't believe it. But UConn is one that they desperately want to be in a power league. I mean, who wouldn't want to be? And they're another one that, the basketball is very good in the Big 12.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that rumor that they could take UConn because of their basketball prowess, and the Big 12
baseball.
Well, nobody's making moves because of baseball, unfortunately.
I know, but I'm just saying their baseball is also good.
Yeah, it's good. But yeah, in their football made a ball game this past year. But the reason they would get in the Big 12 would be because of basketball.
Correct.
So yeah, I've heard the UConn to the Big 12 rumor. You would
talk about already. Obviously, this is driven by football, but talk about already, pretty dominant basketball league becoming even more so with the addition of UConn. And then we know what Utah's done, even though they haven't been as good in recent years. And then obviously Arizona.
Arizona's huge. Yep.
You have teams that are winning national championships and competing for national championships.
With Arizona and especially UConn, those two.
So if the Big 12 has those other 3 from the Pac-12, they almost have to add somebody else from the East for West Virginia, UCF, and Cincy. So
how about East Carolina, baby?
It would be great. Unfortunately, I don't see it happening, but it would be great.
That would be great. But you guys are right about the Big 12 would be here's another thing, guys, that I've heard a lot, and I think I told you guys, but one of the things these conference commissioners are saying right now, I've heard it a lot over and over again, and then the talking heads, of course, talk about it, is the fact that they want games starting, like for their conference, they want every team, every single time slot from say the noon window all the way to the 7:30 window or even later. And if you have a situation like the maybe the Pac-12 or certainly the Big 12 wants to do that, but you have the Pac-12, maybe they want to come east even further than us. I don't know. I mean, to us.
Further than us.
I mean, I meant to
The
say
damn ocean.
No, I meant to say to us, like further, like past, like
I
the
get what you're
FMU.
saying. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how this all plays out. This Colorado thing is just the first domino to fall. There's going to be lots more to come.
And we'll be talking more about that, obviously, because I told you guys they were talking about July and this later than what a lot of the, speaking of talking heads, thought. But that's they did say July, so I'll give them credit for that. I want to give a shout out to Bubba. I know that we have hooked up with a great company with retro T-shirts and also with sweatshirts, and I want to give you the floor to talk about that.
Yeah, very excited about our partnership with Homefield. Homefield's a premium collegiate apparel company based out of Indianapolis. They have products for over 150 schools, whether it's T-shirts, crew neck sweatshirts, hoodies. They do have some hats, not as many hats. I was clicking through the various schools, though, and did notice that they have hats for a handful of teams. But yeah.
No East Carolina hats.
But if you're in the market for some new pirate gear, or maybe you have another favorite team in addition to East Carolina, you know whether it's one of your household names or one of those teams that maybe isn't as well known, but you can go to homefieldapparel.com, promo code TSO at checkout, 15% off your order, and we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you want to support the podcast, that's a good way to do it. We get a kickback from any purchase made. Just be honest, put it out there. So if you are in the market for some new ECU apparel, or like Bubba said, maybe you have another school you root for, homefieldapparel.com, and order yourself 6 or 8 shirts and put in promo code TSO, save yourself 15% at checkout.
And I know Shell Powell is in Charlotte was there during the Peach Bowl year. They even have that 92 champion shirt. I want really bad, and also that gold one with the I like the gold one with the old pirate that says East Carolina Pirates. Really cool. And that on the screen right now for people listening, the scripted Pirates sweatshirt is pretty cool. And I know Bubba and Kyle, you like the no quarter shirt. There they have on the screen now the Pirates champions of 92, the Peach Bowl year. And I will get that because that was my freshman year. So definitely great memories, and can't wait for our program to be at that height, that level or higher. I think that with under Mike Houston. So looking forward to that. And again, homefieldapparel.com. And remember to put the promo code TSO and you get 15% off. And like Kyle said, we are influencers, so we get money for that. But certainly a lot of great gear. And maybe we can talk to them about getting some hats, fellas. You're right about that. I thought about that when I took a look at the website earlier. But certainly, hey, we're off to a great start with the shirts they have now.
Yeah, and again, homefieldapparel.com, and do not forget that promo code TSO, all caps, to save yourself 15% at checkout.
And no doubt. And let's talk about the media days for the AAC. I want to get you guys kind of roundtable thought about that. I thought Mike Houston did a great job talking. Speaking of the Pirates first, I mean, that's the team we cover. Kyle, Bubba, what did you think?
Houston talked about, he seems confident. He seems like he believes in the guys that he has stepping up. He talked about how we have so many guys going to the league, but he likes what we have. And kind of basically said what you'd already heard. There was nothing really newsworthy from Mike Houston, but he did a good job. Shane Calhoun and help me out, Bubba.
Jeremy Lewis.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Jeremy Lewis, yeah. Both very well spoken, represented the program well with what they had to say. Shane Calhoun, talked about how he expected to step up this year and become more of a leader on the football team, but he didn't want to say too much right now. He would let his play speak. My biggest takeaway from that thing, and Bub, I know you watched it, was Biff Poggi.
I was going
to Charlotte.
You've read my mind, Kyle.
a few things. One, I did not realize they had taken over 50 transfers from the portal. So a similar situation to Colorado and in the amount of players that were kicked off the team and the amount of players that were taken. He is a very confident man. He's extremely confident. He said they're not just some Conference USA team coming into the American. They're a brand new team. They got tons of talent. He was angry at the media for picking them last. Yep. He was angry at the media.
Great questions.
They didn't ask him more questions. He pounded on the podium. He really he's something else, man. I'm telling you what. He if he lives up to all he says and all the moxie he has, they're going to be one hell of a football team.
Hey guys, I wanted to throw this out into our great viewers and listeners too. Hey Pace, you know who he reminds me of? Not looks, but his mojo is, like you said. I personally think he's Rex Ryan of the American. I really think that he may have one breakout year, but it's a lot of smoke, man. A lot of smoke. I just don't see it happening. And I tell you what,
it reminded me of Ed Ogeron without the charm.
Oh man, that's another good one. Yeah, that's because Ogeron definitely has a lot of charm.
Yeah, he's got a certain Cajun like ability to him.
Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, and I never thought I'd say this. I do think he'll make this thing a rivalry. I think when we play them, he's going to have that team so fired up. He will have his team fired up. I guarantee you that. So when they come in here, they're going to be acting like this is their Super Bowl.
October 21st.
The problem is he's going to run his mouth that he's going to get our team fired up, because I could see us not giving two craps about playing Charlotte, but because of his mouth, I think he's going to get the fan base here. I do think Biff may make this thing a rivalry game. I think we may hate Charlotte by the time we play them.
You mean you like them now?
No, but it's more of a I don't want to play them. I wish I didn't even have them in our league kind of hate
right now.
What you mean. Whereas by the time we play him, because of his mouth, I may be fired up and ready to hit somebody in the mouth, because he. Bubba, did you get what was your takeaway from old Biff?
Kind of the same situation. I think that just being honest, based on his comments, to my knowledge, no one has really stepped forward over the last 2 or 3 weeks since that happened. The little social media exchange on Twitter between Biff Poggi and Trey Kavanaugh, who's a quality control assistant on the offensive side up at App State. He's actually he's Jerry Moore's grandson. And he had coached previously in the high school ranks there in the greater Charlotte area. So that was funny. And
it was tacky.
And he said nobody cares about what you said because you're an App State coach.
And
they have bigger aspirations than trying to win the Sun Belt. I mean, he is. I think he's trying to create Charlotte. I think what he's doing is trying to create relevancy for Charlotte and trying to create rivalries. And it's funny he hadn't made any comments about East Carolina, because he knows we have to play them this year. Whereas App doesn't play them this year. But I just don't. Bob, I don't know if you did the same thing. When I first started listening to him at the press conference today or whenever it was, I first initially I thought, well, he's not as bad as I thought. Then by the end of the press conference, you were like, this guy's a prick.
Yeah. Well, something like that. No.
You can go ahead and say it, Bub. It's all right.
No, that's not what I said to begin with, but that's why I wasn't saying that. But if
you I don't just think said, he's a prick?
I don't know him, so I'll reserve judgment. But no, what he said, no, it certainly got me even more fired up for that game. And here's hoping our Pirates play the way they can play that day. But as far as that's concerned, I'm like, in just the home schedule as a whole, we just need to handle our business and don't worry about what the home schedule is not. And I'm not talking about the team. I'm talking about from a fan's perspective. Don't worry about what the home schedule isn't. Sure, it's not the home schedules that we've had in the past. We knew that was going to be the case, but our our Pirates are playing better football than they've played in a decade.
Right.
So all we can do is just like what we did in 2013 when we were in Conference USA and not in the American yet.
That's right. And I tell you one thing that
Dominate where we are. We were, beating, and I'm not saying it has to be to this degree. I mean, but just take care of your business where, we're beating UAB 63-14, beating Southern Miss 55-14. Handle our business. Don't worry about it's a nameless opponent. And then that's what the fans need to do. Show up and support the Pirates. And let's stack some 10-win seasons together, because that's something we have 2 in our history. And those 2 were 22 years apart.
Yeah, and it won't be this year. We're not going to have a 10-win season this year. We've got too many question marks, and quite frankly, our schedule is much tougher than people think it is. They did not do us any favors giving us SMU, Tulane, UTSA all on our schedule. I really wish the American, and I understand why we didn't do divisions, because you have a better chance of making the playoffs if you have the first and second place team in your conference playing for your championship rather than division champions. That way, the 2 best teams are playing. But to me, this conference would be a lot more appealing if we had divisions. I would much rather be playing Temple, South Florida, Memphis, UAB, etc., than playing UTSA, Rice, SMU, Tulsa.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We've got a heck of a coach and a coaching staff. I love the recruits. I love the transfer portal. We're going to be Mike Houston. I've never seen the coach more confident than he is right now. And he's not a guy that's going to be rah-rah and just doing a biff. I mean, that's a new verb, doing a biff. Biff is selling hope. We're not selling hope. And we need to go out there. And that day, October 21st, I'm telling you, Pirate Nation, right now, what do you have better to do on a Saturday in Greenville? Better to do than that, because it's so much fun. The tailgating, they are doing the game day experience. The Pirate fans, go out there and get your tickets, man.
The Charlotte game, as we're talking about specifically, is homecoming, and the good news about that game also is prior to that we play Thursday, October 12th. So you're going to have like 3 straight Saturdays of the home game before that one, because we're on the road. Then we play on a Thursday, and then of course we won't play the following Saturday because we play Thursday night. So that'll be the first Saturday game in quite a few weeks at home.
Right.
So no matter what, I would expect a good crowd for that Charlotte game. And
I tell you what, Pays is going to be spinning tunes on the 1s and 2s. I know he does a big homecoming. You can plug that in the chat. But Pays, don't you have a big homecoming show that you've got coming up? I know that he'll be playing somewhere, so that'll be really cool for sure. I love that, Bubba, where you say the prop bet: will Biff wear sleeves and Dowdy Ficklin, or it'll be more like Larry the Cable Guy? Get her done.
Yeah, we'll know more about Charlotte and Biff's attire. As you know, he is an assistant coach. He like to go sleeveless. I would think that the Charlotte administration is going to ask him to wear a polo or something on the sidelines to look more professional as a head coach. But who knows? They may let him be him. Hey, look, Charlotte plays. Oddly enough, we play Michigan on Peacock week 2. The last I saw, I don't know if this is official or not, but Charlotte's going to play Maryland on NBC week 2. So we'll know what Charlotte is, and we'll know what we are by the time we play them in late October.
Yeah, and Phil still really likes Charlotte, and I can't believe that, because I'm like, oh really? I just don't. I don't see year one.
He picked them. He picked them. If I'm not mistaken, Dave, he picked them. He didn't pick them last. I believe he picked Tulsa last, but I think he picked them 10th.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Dave, are you talking more about big picture more so than this year? Was Phil still saying that he liked them, the possibility of them turning into a UCF or something like that down the road? Is that what you're saying?
I think that he bought the bit, and I love Phil still, so I'm not dogging him, but I think he bought the bill of goods. I think
something you heard on the radio.
Yeah, he was on with Patrick Johnson on 94.3 The Game, and I was just really surprised because
Well, he has them in his magazine. I'll grab it, but I believe he has them picked 10th in the American. So he has them behind us. So he must have been saying something completely different than what he said on in his magazine. What did he say?
I mean, he's just talking about the fact of in other words, the transfers coming in, all the transfers, and he was, I think, buying into that. Biff was saying that the team is. I don't know how the team is going to be, but as far as you said 10th place, I think maybe he's just being kind and nice as far as that they're not as good as the hype of Biff. And hey, that's fine. Biff he's selling his program, and that's the part of the job as CEO, being head coach, is to sell your program. So one thing I'll tell you, Biff, is get more than 15,000 seats.
He said he brought in 52 transfers. And most of them for Power 5 schools.
Right.
I think he said 20. I think he said 24 of the transfers were from the DMV, the Baltimore, the Maryland, DC, Virginia area, which is where he's from. So they're going to have some talent. And that's a lot of talent to bring together between spring camp and fall camp, and most of those kids he brought in were post spring.
That's what I was going to say.
I think more specifically, those 24 out of 52, they may have not only been from the DMV, but they may have been from St. Francis, because St. Francis has put a very large number of guys in D1 programs and pretty competitive FBS programs. So I think that may even be from St. Francis, but at the very least DMV.
That's where he was high school coach.
Yes, prior to going back to Michigan.
That'll be interesting. I like to say they may be a surprise. They've got some talent. I can tell you what, if they're any good, we better find a way to beat them. I'll just say that. We do not need to be losing to Charlotte in year one. That would be bad.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Bubba Rosenbaum and Kyle Barber. Our LNK Custom Homes show that we have the Pirate football playback on that Sunday night, is going to be probably as big as our North Carolina A&T show we did 5 years ago.
Not. That would probably mean we lost.
No, I know. I said if that happens, if I don't want it to happen, I'm just saying if it did happen, that a lot of people, now that we can take phone calls, people are going to be calling in on our Sunday night show, the Pirate football playback. And
we have.
Not saying I want that.
Yeah, you're certainly right about that, Dave. But hey, let's move on and discuss something else, because at this point in time, no reason to discuss negative hypotheticals.
Okay, what did you have in mind, Bubba?
Just sticking with Media Day. In addition to Biff Poggi's remarks as he left the podium, I think I forwarded to you guys a couple of shorts I put out there on our YouTube channel from Trent Dilfer's comments. It had been pretty well documented, the comments that he made on Sirius XM, I believe it was, at least on a station there in Birmingham, talking about the NIL and tampering occurring with some of the UAB roster. So what were your thoughts on what Trent said, elaborating on some of what he had already mentioned on Sirius XM?
Well, I think that he has, maybe because of the player that he was in the NFL and the fact that he is a marquee hire. It was a surprise hire, obviously, for UAB, but I think that with that program, with what Bill Clark has done and did for that program, there was a lot of great players and there's definitely talent. So I thought it was good that he did that, because I think he's sticking up for the program. And it's one of the problems. Even Mike Houston talked about it last Friday in Cary. It's a problem with tampering, and that's one of the issues that they have to look at. Just like the NBA, if I'm an NBA GM, I can't go talk. If I'm with the Lakers, I'm not going to be talking to the Nuggets or the Suns or the Celtics, anybody else, because that's tampering. And that's something part of the problem with NIL and the transfer portal, different things, is there's consequences that some of us didn't foresee, and that's tampering is one of them. What do you think, Kyle?
No, I agree. And I missed what he said at media day, but I did catch Tom Herman talking about NIL, and I thought he had an interesting perspective. He talked about how certain players, and he used the player at Ohio State when he was an assistant there as an example, are worth or could have been worth or could be worth millions of dollars. He said what's happening now with NIL, instead of those select few or players that are getting their value, basically every player in college football is making some money just to sit there and tweet about the YMCA, as he put it.
Yeah, that was an excellent line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he said, basically he said, you should be able to go out and get your value, but basically without saying it, he said some guys ain't worth any more than a scholarship, and now you got to pay them or find a way for them to get paid. That's basically what he said without saying it.
Well, right. And then you guys know with SMU, wasn't it, guys tell me, isn't it $30,000 a player for the football team? Is it football and basketball? Or
what was reported last year is either $35,000 or $36,000
wow.
for 98 scholarship players, between men's basketball and football, because 85 and 13.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. It was, but okay. So there you go. You're right on the money, Kyle, with that is that there are players that are getting paid that deserve to get paid. And there's ones that, that are lucky to have a scholarship. They're good enough to be a scholarship, but they're not the standouts. But you're right. If, in fact, with the Pirates, we're going to have to raise the par level for us is $1 million. So for Team Boneyard, but we need to do 2 or 3 million because we're going to have to compete with the SMUs of the world that are in. They're not Alabama. They're in our same conference. So we can say all day long that they have more money. They're a private school, this and that, their endowment, blah, 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 blah. The reality is we've got to raise that money. And I hope that people will go to Team Boneyard. You know what? I can only afford $50 a month, but I feel like that $600 is definitely helping us out when it comes to Team Boneyard.
One big thing the American could do is do what the Sun Belt does and allow non-qualifiers. And if the American would do that, there are certain schools in the American like Rice, SMU, Tulane that couldn't take them anyway. And that would really help schools like East Carolina, who can't compete financially with SMU, Tulane, Rice because they're private institutions for NIL. But we could get players that, we can certainly outbid probably any school in the Sun Belt. So I really wish the American would change their stance on that.
I just simply think it's speaking of stepping up, we're talking about the football team. We have a lot of people that are not even in the Pirate Club. We have people that just choose season tickets based on if NC State's playing. We need to have
you're not going to make those people. You're not going to make those people give NIL. If they're only buying season tickets as if we're playing NC State or North Carolina, they're not going to give to NIL. What we really need to get NIL going, we really, Greenville's a small market. We really need to get more businesses involved, not just individuals with the collective.
Yep.
We need some of, I wish Vince McMahon would become more involved. Mr. Beast.
Mr. Beast. I mean, hello, right there.
If he could become more involved, could you imagine? I don't know. Maybe we have proposed it to him.
50 million, 100
million. Be a Mr. Beast student athlete, and use East Carolina players in his videos. I mean, that would be a great recruiting tool that would be totally legal. It would nothing illegal about it. If you're an East Carolina player and you're appearing in Mr. Beast videos, now you have a chance to be an internet celebrity because he's, the most followed person on YouTube. And what a recruiting tool that could be if we could work that out with him.
No question. And once we get done with the first 60 million, for only 60 million for Pirates Unite, you best believe we've got a lot of stuff that we need to definitely work on the second go round. And I know personally that they're not going to stop at the 60 million. So, which is great, but the indoor, as far as once we get the indoor facility, the baseball, obviously the basketball is already completed. We have they need to work on the teams building is the one that we've got to fundraise for, but the women's locker room for swimming and diving is already done. They're just trying to raise money for some graphics they can put up. But we're really in a lot better shape with the campaign. But we really, I know, Kyle, we talked about it, and Bubba, with NIL. There are going to be people that don't agree with that. Well, give it to Pirates Unite. If there are people that don't think we should pay players, then put all your money in facilities, because we really need. Kyle, we talked about it with Coach Houston said the NIL is the number one thing for the program. I know Coach Schwartz talked about it on his interview with us back a few weeks ago. For Pirates Unite, you can call the Pirate Club 252-737-4540, or one of my favorite websites, ecupirateclub.com, and you can go on there and donate. In fact, you can. What's great, Bubba and Kyle, is let's say that you say I can give $500, but I can only give it over 4 years. Well, guess what? You could give $125 for 4 straight years, and you still have given $500 to Pirates Unite. You don't have to, the Pirates Unite campaign, you don't have to be $1 million donor, $100,000 donor, $10,000. If you only have $50, $100, I think we need to push that even more.
Yeah, give what you can. I started a little campaign on Hoist the Colors about a month ago, and we raised several $1,000s just doing that in about 48 hours. So, I mean, let's keep doing it. Yeah. Just give what you can. If you can only donate $20, donate $20 this week, donate $20 2 weeks from now, donate $5 today, donate $10 in another week. If everybody would do that, we get to where we will need to be with the Pirates Unite campaign in a hurry. The NIL thing is a different story. What some people just ain't going to give the NIL another, but it needs to be explained better. I don't think it's been communicated to the masses, and I know Schwartz and Houston have talked about it, but it needs to. There needs to be phone calls going out to Pirate Club members, et cetera, specifically talking to them about NIL, and we're going to get left behind if we don't figure out a way to get this done. There needs to be some legislation to reel some of this NIL in. I'm all for players making money, but we need to get some legislation to reel some of this in.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm putting in the chat about how many people on our show right now are giving to Pirates Unite and or Team Boneyard. That'll be interesting to see, because that's the thing. We need your help, and we talk to the folks at the Pirate Club a lot, and when it comes to that, and obviously we appreciate Henry, Hank, everybody, Fern Davenport, everybody with Team Boneyard. I know they have worked really, really hard, and guys, they have been working basically this year is when things really, back in January, things really took off. So let me ask a question for you folks. How many of you guys want the Pirates to win? Well, if you want the Pirates to win, then I know I do. It doesn't matter how we think about paying players, not player, the name, image. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is that is how we're going to compete. And if you're a competitor like I am, and the guys on this show, we want our Pirates to win as many games as possible. That's how you keep your Pirates, is to do that. Thank God for Coach Schwartz and NIL, because that helped us save basically our whole team. We only lost Javon Small in basketball because of pretty much NIL, and we have a great leadership with Coach Schwartz and what he's doing with the basketball program.
Yeah, a lot fewer players to try to keep in place.
Yep.
And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but when it comes to these issues, whether it's Pirates Unite, the Pirate Club's annual fund, or Team Boneyard that we have on the screen now for our live viewers, whether you're giving to one or two or all three of those causes.
And season tickets is actually $4.
Season tickets definitely as well. We know how important the season tickets are, and last we heard we're right around 14,000. Last year we sold 15,885. I want to say, or 15,835. Yep. So we need to top 16 and then keep going. But the two quotes I always refer back to, whether it's myself or talking to other Pirate fans, alums or otherwise about this, is what Ruffin McNeil said when he was hired at his introductory press conference. What he said as far as what can I do today to advance the cause of East Carolina University. And then also what Leo Jenkins said, above all, I take with me the lasting commitment to answer the call of East Carolina whenever and wherever I can serve. There are certainly more important priorities. And if you're someone who just flat out cannot give, then we're obviously not talking to you. But
Right.
if you love East Carolina and you have the ability to give, we need you to give.
And give what you can, like what Kyle said. Give what you can. We were talking about that with $5, $100,
Look, none
$200.
of us are rich. None of us are rich.
Right.
None of the three guys on the show. Bub is
No, I'm a school
teacher.
teacher.
Bubba's a teacher. Dave works in hospitality at the hospital. I work doing embroidery work. And Bubba's wife's a teacher. My wife's a teacher, and so it's not like we're rich and we all give what we can, and that's all we're asking everybody else to do because we want to see the Pirates succeed, and we're probably preaching to the choir. I would imagine most of our audience does give, but if you're one of those people out there listening and you don't give what you can. You don't. The minimum to join the Pirate Club is $100. That's it. And then
Right.
to give to Team Boneyard or to the Pirates Unite campaign, you can give what you want. If it's $5, if that's all you can give, they'll take it.
That's right. And that's the thing is that, and like I mentioned before, guys, on the show, for the baseball project expansion, if it's 6,000 members of the Pirate Club, if every single person of the Pirate Club gave $500, then guess what? We have the expansion would start now.
And that's a good point, Dave. On that Pirates Unite, you can designate where you want your money to go to.
Yep.
Unlike the Pirate Club, where it's just general, scholarship funding and donation, you can specifically earmark where you want that money to go to. I donated all mine to the football practice facility. But if you want it to go to football, if you want it to go to baseball, if you want it to go to basketball, if you want to divide it up between all three, that's up to you.
And I'll tell you that I'm making a big donation to the baseball team, to that project, and we'll unveil that very soon when I have everything official. But I'm going to do that because I think it's important, and I think the baseball facility is so vital to us going to Omaha, for example. And I think we are so close, guys, like $3-4 million away. That if we can have more people step up, and like we said with those two projects, we've got to get those two projects done. Pretty much everything else is done, but those two right there, with the indoor practice facility and with the baseball expansion, we've got to get those two done. So again, go to ecupirateclub.com, or you can call them at 252-737-4540 for the Pirate Club. I've called it so much I haven't memorized, but please do that. Let's move on. I know Brandon had a question, guys, about Jim Harbaugh. I know you want to talk about it, Kyle, about he says, what do y'all think about the Michigan news? He's talking about, for those that don't know, that Harbaugh is going to be suspended for 4 games. I'll just say this. I've heard this for other people. It's the reason that I shake my head with NCAA is that, they have a situation where, and I don't know all the ins and outs for Harbaugh. I'm not a Michigan fan, but he gets 4 game suspension. Then there's not a set rule for things across the board like there should be. And, and they're not making a big deal about it because we're a cupcake being East Carolina, according to, the talking heads. So it won't matter anyway. They'll be 4-0. That drives me crazy because I love my school, and hopefully we can go up there and give them a game. That's what I'm hoping.
I don't even know what Harbaugh did besides it being a recruiting violation.
Yeah.
I know he's suspended for 4 games. How much of an impact will that have on the game? Who knows? He'll still be coaching in the preparation, et cetera, et cetera. It's interesting. It's a good talking point. I don't know how much impact that'll have on the game.
What about you, Bubba? What do you think about Harbaugh? And you know how important coaching is it's probably, you don't think it's a big deal, or do you think it's a big deal?
I mean, anytime you're going to be missing your head coach, it's a deal, for sure. But at the same time, I mean, it's not going to be obviously he's going to be present throughout camp and helping dot all the I's and cross the T's up to that point. So yeah, could it throw a little bit of a wrench in things? Sure, but it's not like they lost 3 or 4 or 5 starters or something.
Well, it's not like, if suddenly they announce, hey, instead of it being a 4-game suspension, he's fired, like a Bobby Petrino situation when Arkansas was preseason top 10, and then John L. took over as interim head coach, and they were awful. If that were to happen and he wasn't there for fall camp, then who knows? But as far as we know, it's just going to be a 4-game suspension, and he'll be there to prepare the team and guide practice, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think it'll have that much of an impact. But like I said, it is an interesting talking point.
And if we win, then they'll blame the fact that Harbaugh wasn't there. So
you have an
excuse now.
If we win, who gives a crap? They can say it because Harbaugh wasn't there, because it was raining, because it was too hot. Who gives a damn?
I definitely don't. I just want the win. So anyway, do you guys have anything before we go? I know we're going a little bit long, but breaking news there with those two stories. So with Colorado going to the Big 12, going back home, if you will, and Jim Harbaugh, we wanted to discuss that. Do you have anything before we go?
Just promote some of our content. If you missed our conversation with the new play-by-play voice of the Pirates, Chris Edwards, and definitely go and check that out. Receive some compliments on that conversation, and I appreciate that from some loyal Pirates and listeners. But also our position previews and then opponent previews. Check those out as well.
No doubt. And then we've got a big show tomorrow night, right?
We do. We'll have Big Game Boomer joining the show. That is John Whitaker, better known as Big Game Boomer on social media. He puts out a lot of lists, whether it's position groups, a team's offense, coaches, uniforms, whatever. He puts out a lot
for each school.
Yeah, puts out a lot of lists, a lot of rankings. Like Kyle said, including podcasts for each school. But his focus is the Big 12. But he'll be game to talk beyond.
That's a timely invite. Didn't even think about that, Bubba. This was prepared before Colorado was invited, so very timely.
Yeah, that worked out well to have him on tomorrow, right after the Colorado news broke today.
I'm gonna put him on the spot and ask him who his favorite East Carolina podcast is. So
I'm just gonna say he got it wrong last year. We know he made a mistake, and we're assuming he will not make that mistake again this year.
That's right. Everybody learns from their mistakes. Hey, before we go, we're on mind, folks. Again, we've teamed up with homefieldapparel.com. And hey, Kyle, they are awesome, man. I know you were in the T-shirt business, and when it comes to apparel,
used to be, not so much anymore.
Well, I know you do more embroidery,
yeah. Nonetheless, still your point still stands. Homefieldapparel.com, 15% off at checkout with promo code TSO. Support East Carolina, support the sports objective. Go get your gear for the upcoming 2023 football season. Let me get the website right. Homefieldapparel.com. Go get your apparel for the 2023 football season. Homefieldapparel.com. Promo code TSO at checkout. Save yourself 15%.
Want to give a shout out to Porky's Backyard Barbecue. Appreciate their sponsorship of the show. And again, we're going to have our big show August the 5th, our college football preview. If you're anywhere near Williamston, then come by and see us from literally 10 until noon on Saturday, August the 5th. It's 805 East Boulevard in Williamston. Call them for, hey, if you're looking for, maybe you have a family reunion, you've got a big party, they can just give them some notice and they can hook you up 100, 150 people. If it's 5 people, it doesn't matter. They can look out for you. If you've got a big party or small party, give them a call, 252-661-0337. And Bubba, I know last but not least, certainly L&K Custom Homes. So glad to have KK back. Kevin Walker is going to do our Pirate football playback. And thank you, Kev, for all your support of the program.
Yeah, appreciate KK being back on board. L&K Custom Homes, this year's title sponsor for a third year in a row of the Pirate football playback. We'll have KK on the show here in the next week or so.
Right.
Trying to work that out with his busy schedule. And then we'll also have another guest. I will say former Pirate football player. We'll wait to unveil who that is.
Oh, yeah.
But he'll be joining us probably every week on the Pirate football playback to provide some perspective on the previous game as well as what lies ahead for the Pirates.
No doubt about it. I can't wait for that. And we've got a lot of great shows coming up in the fall. We'll tell you about that. Some ones you already know and some new ones we're working on. So look forward to that. Guys, thank you so much. Thanks to Chris Doering from the SEC Network, the analyst, and, of course, SiriusXM. He does a great job with covering the SEC. Appreciate his breakdown of the SEC. Kyle, do you have anything before we go?
Not a thing.
All right, Bubba, do you have anything before we go?
I do not. Go Pirates.
All right, appreciate you guys very much. We'll be back tomorrow night. Check it out, and you can listen to our show, all your favorite podcasts. Don't forget, by the way, one more thing, to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're getting close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers, so help us out and tell a friend, like us on Facebook and all of social media. We'll get out of here. Thank you guys so much, and as always, good night, everybody. Go Pirates!
I'm a pirate down to my soul, and I don't back down, not at all. Find out when the cannons explode, from the sidelines down to the post. Put it down like not even close, all out to the last whistle blow. From the flag with the soul and crossbones. Everybody stand up, get your hands up, let the team know that we got they back. This is our house, this is our town, on top, everyone not copy that. Everybody in the stands go bananas, scream loud, baby, don't hold back. Every foot, every yard, every first down, every touchdown with the cannons blast. Get it on, get it all, get the wave going like a hurricane.